You are watching the Clearwater Bombers Sports Show, and I'm Bruce Kaufman.
And I'm Wayne Dees, and it's good to be back with you, Bruce, for another show.
That's right, and we have a special show today.
We really do. It's about the National All-Star team that was picked from 1949 to 1969. But
yeah, well, that's the 20-year period of time that the Bombers were so good, they created the legend of the Clearwater Bombers men's fast-pitch softball team.
they did do that, and a lot of these guys were selected as All-Stars. Some of them, I did not realize that they were selected that many times, but we're going to try to cover that today.
Right, you know, and Wayne, during that period of time, not only did the Bombers win a lot of world championships, and they also hosted a lot of championships, and there's a lot of work that goes on when you're hosting a championship.
There is a lot of work behind the scenes, and we have some names from the 1969 All-Star game that was played in Clearwater.
Well, that would be really good if we gave them some recognition for their hard work. Most of them were volunteers.
I think so, because they're faceless most of the time.
Right, you know, and as we've said off of many shows, the Clearwater Bombers had a great fan base. We had a lot of community support, and they were working really hard to make sure that the team kept their legend alive.
You know, when you're a winner, everybody wants to be a part of it.
Yeah, you know, and that one of the names that we've mentioned many times in many different capacities is Eddie Moore, and he was the general chairman.
Right, he was the general chairman of the National All-Star Committee, and he also was the athletic director for the city of Clearwater for I don't know how many years.
Right, and very successful at that. And of course, now the big sports complex, the softball complex, is the Eddie C. Moore softball complex.
Duly recognized.
Yeah, definitely. But then the president of the All-Star Committee was Bill Curry.
And if I'm not mistaken, Bill was involved with the Bombers, not as a player, but he loved the Bombers, and his son was actually the bat boy, I believe. If you look at some of the team pictures, you'll see little Curry on there.
Yeah. You know, and a lot of the young boys in the community of Clearwater got to play bat boy. In fact, in the 90s, we had my daughter, my youngest daughter, she was our bat girl. So we had a bat boy, my son, and a bat girl.
Well, at least you weren't prejudiced one way or the other.
That's right. We let the whole community be involved.
Women's rights.
Yes, right. So then George Hill was the treasurer and in charge of park personnel.
And George was involved with the Bombers, you know, on their board for years.
Yeah. Many of these people served not just 1 year, but many, many years, and sometimes a couple decades. So there's John Bolton. And it shows that he was treasurer of miscellaneous activities.
Kind of an unusual way to put it.
Well, you know, and then Stuart Blair was in charge of tickets.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, and the ticket is very important because that's what got you into the park, so you could see the game.
Exactly, and it's a one-time game, so a lot of responsibility there.
Right, you know, and the All-Star game, as I said years ago, I didn't live in Clearwater during this period of time, but every once in a while, the Bombers would get mentioned. And I always thought that was exciting for me because we used to vacation in Clearwater. And so I kind of have a special affinity to the Clearwater Bombers because
Did you go to the games when they came up north?
Well, I did. And, you know, they are great. It was a great legend. They were great players. You know, and then we've got Roscoe Gooden for the public address. And
hey, that's a big part of keeping the fans interested.
You know, and we had said Bill Curry was the president, but here's Bob Curry. He's in charge of transportation and program sales.
And I hope that's not a typo on my committee.
Well, I hope not either, but you know, like, for example, we've got a couple program books here from the 90s, and it's interesting that they had a program back in the 69 era.
Oh, yes.
So sorry we didn't find a copy of that before to have it here live and in person, but I'm sure we're going to have it on display in our museum in the future. So then Gene Davis was one of the hosts. He was in charge of the hosts. You know, and One thing that I've always liked about the Clearwater area is that the people here are so friendly and they're so welcoming.
They are. It's that Southern hospitality.
It is, and it's wonderful, and people from all around the world love that.
And I believe Gene Davis was a board member, other than just this committee for the All-Star game. I believe he was a longtime board member.
Yeah, okay. And then we've got Guy Kennedy Jr., who was in charge of the legal aspects of this All-Star game.
Well, as a lawyer, you would know that, right? You got to have that advice in case.
I'm telling you, there's always something that needs to be looked over by a lawyer to take a look and make sure everything's okay. And then Mrs. Bill Curry was in charge of the All-Star program sales.
Yeah, and that's you got to have people at the game going around selling those programs,
Right.
and that's
Right.
not an easy task.
Well, and the interesting thing is a lot of times people don't realize they need it in order to get the information to know who the players are on the field and to keep score often.
They do, and thank God we had a lot of collectors because I got some of this information out of the All-Star books and programs.
Right. So it's always good to have people that are historians, if you will. All right.
All right, we'll go ahead.
Go ahead.
We've got a video of the All-Stars. We want to present that, and then we're going to talk about the individual players.
Wow, Wayne, that was a good video about the All-Stars from the Clearwater Bombers.
Yep, a lot of people that probably some people didn't know. So they get to meet them and learn a little bit about them, and we're going to do a little more talking about them.
Well, I noticed that during that period of time, occasionally on the screen you had a number like 5 times, 7 times, 1, 2 times.
Right. There was a
so-
little number that rolled out, and that was the number of times that they were a national all-star.
Right, and so the ones that didn't have a number, they were there as a national all-star one time.
Correct.
Right, okay, and I was totally impressed with some of those guys. They're, 4, 5, 6, 7 times.
Haney and Tomlinson 7 times out of 20 years. That's pretty good ball playing.
That's pretty good. It really is. I noticed that we've got a picture of one of my favorite Clearwater Bomber players, a pitcher by the name of Herb Dudley.
Right. Herb was supposedly has been talked about as being the greatest right-handed pitcher ever to play fast pitch softball. He still holds the record for 55 strikeouts in a 21 inning game in the World Tournament.
Wait. Time out. Fast pitch softball is only a 7-inning game.
Right.
So you're telling me that they played 3 full games in one game?
Right. It was nothing to nothing. Nobody could score.
Right. Well, you can't end the game without having a winner.
And I believe the Bombers won that game 4-3.
Oh, wow. So all of a sudden in the 21st inning, everybody starts scoring.
Well, somebody did. The Bombers did. And the other thing about Dudley, they say that he won over 1,000 games in his career.
Well, and we've got the record books for a lot of this, Wayne. It's just a matter of compiling it, and we need volunteers for our museum to come and read through newspaper articles and yearbooks and all-star game programs and help us to assimilate all of this information so that we can add it to our show and also use it in our museum.
That would be the benefit of becoming a volunteer or a legacy group board member.
Well, I remember spending some time with Herb Dudley, and I just was impressed by the quality of the man.
He was high quality. He wouldn't pitch on Sunday.
Right.
And the other thing is he was a big promoter of fast pitch softball that all these high school girls are
Right.
playing now.
Right. And I met him several times on the ball field where he would tell me, well, if I wanted to talk to him, he had a coaching session and he'd be out there with one of the young ladies coaching her on how to pitch fast pitch softball.
Well, he worked with Mitch Harder a lot, and
Right.
some of the other pitchers of the Bombers, but I've never seen anybody make a softball move in all the different directions that he can make it move.
Yeah. Well, he was selected 3 times as an All-Star in 1949, 1950, and 1957.
And there was a big break in there, and I don't understand that unless, I don't know why there was such a big break in there.
Well, and I'm not sure why he wouldn't have been on more teams as an all-star pitcher. There's no doubt in anybody's mind in the Clearwater area that Herb Dudley was one of the best pitchers in fast pitch softball.
If not
of
the
all
greatest
time.
in
Yes,
history.
Definitely. But, occasionally the committees that pick all-stars pick people for one reason or another, and you never know for sure. Could be maybe he was just saying, hey, this year I don't want to be picked because I want you to pick somebody else.
Well,
he was a gentleman.
Yes, he was. And also,
I would say that might be something that he would do.
I believe most of these all-stars were picked mostly from the statistics of the World Tournament.
Okay.
Not always, but
Yeah.
mostly.
Right. So we have another picture for our next all-star, and this was also a pitcher.
This was John Hunter. He's a left-handed pitcher,
Okay.
and he has the reputation of being the greatest left-handed pitcher ever in the game. He had 45 consecutive strikeouts at a national tournament game.
Wow, 45. That's an awful lot.
Now, 3 sevens is 21.
21.
That's 21 outs in a 7-inning game. 45 strikeouts. Think about that.
So the game had to go either into extra innings, or would it possibly be over 2 different games?
It possibly could. I don't have that information, but I thought, geez, that would be about 3 games.
We'll have to research that, and I'm sure there's a lot of information at the ASA Hall of Fame and Museum in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. But he was a 5-time selection for the All-Star team.
And he was a good hitter.
And that's unusual for a pitcher. For some reason, the pitchers normally don't know how to hit another pitcher's ball. But,
right, he was a good hitter. He was like MVP of the regional tournaments to get the Bombers to the World Tournament. But he had to be really, really good.
Yeah. Well, he was picked in 1951, 1953, 54, 55, and 56. He had quite a streak going there.
He did. 5-time, right?
Yeah, 5 times. That's awesome. Well, Wayne, we generally have a Guess Who section, and I'm always excited because you pick somebody, then I have to try to figure out who it is.
Right, you may know this guy because I think you were around when he came to the Bombers, but let's go ahead and watch our Guess Who and see if people can figure it out.
Sure.
I came from Madison, Wisconsin. I played for the Farm Tavern, which won the ISC and the ASA several times under Rod Peterson. And he became very prominent in the game. I had was coming very close to my retirement at that time, but I knew when I transferred down here to play for the Bombers in '76 that I was playing for one of the top 5 teams in the United States. And that's one of my goals, was to play for one of the best teams. It was either Rebestos, Aurora. They had a Santa Rosa team out of California, Clearwater Bombers, and I can't think of the 5th, but there were some good teams. There was 40 teams in the ASA tournaments back then. When I retired, there was about 24, 26 teams. So it was going backwards instead of forwards as far as recruiting football players, because they came from New Zealand, Canada, all over the world actually. But it was a big bonus for me to come to Clearwater and play for the Bombers, and I learned quite a bit about the game, and my family really enjoyed the Clearwater area at that point in time, and we're still here. So this is 2015, so I guess we enjoy it pretty well.
Okay.
Tell me who it was, Bruce.
That one I know, Sonny Hornbeck. So,
right, Sonny came to us from the Midwest.
Right.
And when he came, was a heavy drop ball pitcher. He had a hard drop, and he was a pretty good hitter. Of course, with the Bombers, he didn't get to hit a lot as a pitcher.
Yeah, well, you know, Sonny is around and has been around for quite a few years. And like he said, you know, he had experience with the Farm Tavern team. And we played them in the 90s when we went on our tour and had a couple of the tournaments. And so it's kind of interesting that, you know, the comment that I've made for years is that Clearwater was made famous by the Bombers before Winter was a Dolphin.
Well, they were, I guess, and I know they were known worldwide. And the farm team had a guy named Roy Burleson.
Right.
And we've talked about him before. He was the jumper that we talked about.
Yeah.
He would end up about 5 feet closer to home plate when he let go of the ball than the 46 feet.
Right. Well, you know, and the interesting thing that Sonny pointed out was that, you know, his goal was he wanted to play for one of the top 5 teams in the nation. And, of course, the Bombers were one of those. In fact, at that time, they were the best team in the nation.
And can you blame him? I mean, he has the talent to do it because he stayed here a number of years. So.
No, of course not. And, of course, you know, softball being a community-type game, many times during or after the game, because we would often play doubleheaders, and the ball players knew each other, and so they would chat with each other, and somebody would say, boy, I sure like to play for the Bombers, and somebody would tell the manager, and the manager would say, hey, next season you want to come down and try out?
Every Saturday night we used to go out to one of the local pizza joints.
That's
and
right.
Have pizza,
That's
myself
right, you know.
and Gary Kane and his wife, and sometimes other people would join us.
Oh yeah, you know, and quite often take over the entire sports bar with fans who wanted to be near the ball players as well. And it's always a lot of fun to have a Bomber Blast. We get a lot of people that show up at one of the bars. It's one of the sports bars, the grills, restaurants in Clearwater area. And
We're going to reestablish that, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Probably in the next month, we're going to have a nice Bomber Blast and let everybody in on some of the exciting things that are happening in our quest to get a physical museum, whereas this is our quest for a virtual museum. So anyway, Wayne, talking about the All-Stars, we've got another picture for another one of my favorite All-Stars, this Bobby Forbes.
Bobby Forbes started with the Bombers when he was 14 years old.
Wow.
He was a high school student at Clearwater.
Yeah.
And Bobby went on to be a Florida Gator. He played for the Florida Gators football. And at one time, he held the longest kickoff touchdown return for the Gators.
Wow.
Of 90-something yards. But I think it's been broken now. But
yeah. Well, you know, the interesting thing is I probably need to go back and start looking at some of the old footage of some of the college football games, because I probably watched future Bombers playing in college football. And I can remember back then, you remember, you know, the Florida teams used to beat the Big Ten or the Pac teams quite regularly in the bowl games.
well, the SEC is big time football anyway.
Definitely, you know, and so here we are. But Bobby Forbes was in professional baseball
For a year or two, I think.
51, 53, and 56. You know, and the interesting thing is this is an area that's very strong in baseball. We have a lot of spring training teams that come down here, and so a lot of our ball players have had experience, like you.
There was an award created for Bobby Forbes. He died of cancer at a very young age. And we're going to have that on the show pretty soon,
Okay.
all the Bobby Forbes award winners.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Joe Stalteri. I'm one of the owners of Complete Care Systems. At Complete Care Systems, we do carpet cleaning, upholstery cleaning, tile and grout sealing, wood floor and laminate floor deep cleaning, as well as stripping and waxing of linoleum and vinyl floors, and a whole lot more. We also run daily deals and special, which you can find at CompleteCareSystems.com, or simply call Trisha up at 727-364-5158, and she'll answer all your questions and give you over the phone free estimates. Or she'll send me out to your home or office to give you an on-site free estimate. At Complete Care Systems, we don't cut corners, we clean them.
You're watching the Clearwater Bombers Fast Pitch Softball Sports Show, and we're talking about the Bomber All-Stars.
The National All-Star team.
Yes, right. And so the next picture that we have is for Nolan Whitlock. And Nolan was an All-Star 4 times, Wayne.
Right, he played back in the 50s.
Right.
And I didn't have a lot of information on him. I know he was a good hitter. He was a left-handed, I believe, No, I better not say that he was a left-handed hitter. But anyway, he was nominated 4 times back in the 50s.
Yeah, that was 54, 55, 56, and 57. So during that 4-year period of time, he was doing very, very well and doing wonders for the Bombers. And so once again, this is a virtual museum. So anybody that knows Nolan Whitlock and has information about Nolan, feel free to give Wayne a call and let's add it into the history books.
Do that, and our phone numbers will be up at the end of the show, same
Right.
ones about the golf tournament, etc.
So the next player was fast, like his name says, Bobby Sprinthal.
Right, and he was very fast. He was an outfielder for the Bombers.
Well, when you're in
And-
the outfield, you got to be fast to chase those hits down.
You do.
And so,
And he was a pretty good leadoff hitter, I think, for the
Okay.
Bombers.
and the interesting thing is being a leadoff hitter, it's very important that you get on base. Doesn't matter whether you got there with a single or a walk.
In fact, I saw there's an old-time video out of him, and he's bunting.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a world tournament. He's laying down a bunt, trying to beat it out to first base.
Right,
So,
and the interesting thing is that many of these softball games in fast pitch are won 1-0 or by 1 run with a very small score.
They are.
So just getting one ball player, one batter onto base as a runner could mean the difference between winning and losing.
it could, especially in those when you get up against those national power teams
Oh,
of
yeah.
5 or 6 across the country.
Definitely. So Bobby was on the All-Star team in 1955, 56, 57, and 59. So we've got Jerry Curtis is our next All-Star.
Jerry Curtis was a local boy from Clearwater, and he was a power hitter.
Yeah.
He hit for power, and he ended up hurting his knee, which shortened his career. But I believe if we get a chance in the future to show the 1961 All-Star game, you'll see him hitting a grand slam.
Oh, wow. And I'm quite excited about looking forward to seeing that game over again. It's been many, many years since I saw that. But Jerry was a 2-time All-Star, 57 and 59. And like you said, he was a power hitter, but he was an outfielder.
Yeah, and I believe he would have been there more if he hadn't had the injury.
Yeah. So then the next one we have is Ricky Tomlinson.
Well, I don't know what I can say about Ricky. 7 times out of 20 years, he was voted on the All-Star team.
Well, he was a great hitter. I mean, hitting over 400%. I mean, that's pretty
One
awesome.
year, he hit right at 400 almost all year, they said.
Yeah, awesome. He was known as a smooth fielder.
Right, he throws right, and he bats left. But he told a story that he was from Canada.
Uh-huh.
And he played in a league up there where they didn't use any gloves. Only the catcher and the first baseman used gloves.
Yeah. Well, softball was created with a boxing glove tied up into a ball. And in Chicago, where softball was allegedly created in a factory, they still have a mush ball league where the ball is 16 inches in diameter and much softer, and so nobody uses a glove except the catcher.
Right, and they have some leagues down here in Clearwater, in the recreational leagues.
Uh-huh.
It's a co-ed league.
Uh-huh.
And you got to bat a guy and a girl, and you got to also play like third base. If third base is a girl, you got to have a shortstop guy, second base girl, first base
Okay.
guy, or vice versa.
Well, and that's interesting, and perhaps in the future, as we do these shows, we'll find some people that are playing in these leagues, and we'll interview them and give people information on, how they can join the league and
We possibly
be
can
on
do
the
that.
team. So the next player we have is Doug Mason.
Well, Doug is one of the most famous guys around this area. He was a local, and he started when he was like 17 or 18 years old.
Uh-huh.
He was a teacher at Clearwater High School, and he kind of has a reputation of being the best third baseman that ever played the game. He's a
Right.
heavy family man, as you saw in the picture
yeah,
there.
yeah.
That was his daughter. She was a pretty good ball player too. She played in college.
Well, he's a great family man, just a nice guy to know, and 4-time All-Star.
Four-time All-Star. I think we will probably get him on the show one of these days. He's almost right at 90 years old.
Well, we need to do that soon then.
And he was proud to tell me
Yeah.
that, Wayne, I don't take any pills or medicine.
That's good. That's good. You know what? The neat part about Doug was he was known for his key hits in special games.
He was. He got a lot of key hits. I remember him scoring the winning run in the World Tournament against the Robusto Cardinals. I believe that was out in Texas somewhere or out that way. And he just an all-around good person.
But he's a good fielder, and four-time All-Star in 1959, 62, 63, and 65.
Yeah, and you know what he said? He said Ricky Tomlinson wouldn't have made as many All-Stars if he'd have been a little taller, because he said the ball would bounce over his head. Ricky go behind him, catch it, and throw the guy out at first.
Well, there you go. You know, it's teamwork. You know.
It is, and Ricky covered a lot of ground. Ricky Tomlinson behind Doug.
Right, right. Well, Bobby Spell is our next All-Star, and he was a two-time All-Star.
Bobby Spell was a pitcher.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember, if you noticed, watching the 1961 All-Star game, he had left the Bombers in 61.
Okay.
And he pitched in that game against the Bombers. He didn't have too good a day, but he did pitch.
Okay, so that's an interesting twist to the story, and we'll have to make sure that when we watch that game, we point those things out. You know, there were a lot of teams that were recruiting Bomber players away from Clearwater, or at least trying to.
Yes, they came and left, and some of the good, some of the better teams would recruit players just like we did. Hornbeck and some of the guys that we ended up getting, and Bobby Quinn, and Joe Lynch. They came from other teams that we either played or saw in tournaments.
Well, and Mitch Harder went to play for other teams for a while as well, but then he came back.
Mitch Harder was back and forth between Georgia. He made a lot. He's in the Georgia Hall of Fame, the Amateur Softball Association Hall of Fame, and he did a lot of good pitching for that team in Atlanta.
And Mitch Harder's going to be in the Clearwater Bomber Hall of Fame too, so
yes,
it's very interesting. So then we've got Bill Massey, and he was another pitcher, Wayne.
Bill Massey was a big guy, and he threw the ball hard. He was a right-handed pitcher. And the funny thing about Bill, I always laugh, I played Little League football in Clearwater.
Oh, yeah?
He was my coach.
Oh, really?
And it was, so far back, they ran a single wing.
Okay.
Is what he knew, and he drew up the plays from a single wing. But Bill was a good ball player. He stayed in Clearwater for 2 or 3 years. And
he was on the 59 and 60 team, and boy, you got to know him real well as a Little League football coach.
Yes, I did. He was selected in 59 and what, 60?
Yeah, 59 and 60, yes.
Okay.
The next one we have is Tommy Moore.
Well, almost everybody in Clearwater knows Tommy Moore. He graduated as a Florida Gator. He played some baseball up there for the Gators. He became a lawyer and got his law degree and practiced law in Clearwater, but he's one of the all-time Bombers. He was designated a number of times, I think 5 or 6.
5 times.
For the All-Star team.
Yeah.
So he was really fast, from what I understand. And his claim to fame, he always told me that he wanted the Florida Gators, when the girls started playing fast pitch, to use the Bomber pickoff.
Okay.
And what it was, the first baseman, kind of played in close. Joe Lewis would come charging in at the batter. The pitcher would throw the ball on the outside corner of the plate where the batter couldn't hit it. Tommy would slip around. He was fast enough to slip around and come in behind the guy and cover first. And they would pick the guy off because, he saw Joe get in closer to home plate. He would try to sneak a couple more steps off the base. And boom, all of a sudden there was a throwdown. Kuykendall with his laser arm would, pick them off. Right.
And a lot of people are still talking about that to this day. Obviously, were some of them. But, being a 5-time All-Star, he was picked in 1960, 1961, 1962, 1965, and 1966. And, I'm a retired attorney, and I know that, as an attorney, you don't have a whole lot of time to do things that you want to do that are fun. But obviously, when you like doing something real well, you can make time for it. And making time to be with the Bombers was important to me in the 90s, and obviously it was important to Tommy back in the 60s.
Tommy was really fast afoot.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
I love the description you gave of the bomber pickoff. That's a nice trick. Yeah. Anyway, we have the next one is Weldon Haney. Now, that's a name we've talked about quite a few times, and you'll see why in just a second.
Right, we've had him on the show. He was 4 or 5 times, there's a 1968, but he was 4 or 5 times the most valuable player in the World Tournament. He also was a good hitter.
Right.
They would sometimes play him in the outfield when he wasn't pitching.
But not only being 4-time most valuable player at the World Tournament, he was 7 times All-Star.
Right.
And,
Go ahead and give the years.
It's a wonderful time. He was an excellent ball player for the Bombers.
Okay.
Now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back for our last segment. You're watching the Clearwater Bomber Sports Show, and we're talking about the All-Star teams from 1949 to 1969.
Right, the National All-Star team, and a lot of times the Bombers played against these teams. It wasn't too often that the Bomber players got to play actually on the All-Star team because they were playing against them. But the way this worked was back in the day, the team that won the national tournament, the World Tournament,
Right, okay.
the All-Stars would make a trip to their location and play a doubleheader or over a weekend.
Okay. So the world champions would be the home team, and the All-Stars would be the visiting
Correct, exactly.
opponent.
Right.
You know, and yet the visiting opponent was made up of all of the best players from all of the best teams from the World Tournament.
Exactly, and you know, a lot of times they would come to play Clearwater even after doing that. You know, when the money was abundant and travel wasn't so expensive, they would come to play the Bombers because the Bombers could give them a lot of competition and beat them a lot of the time.
Right. Well, you know, and the interesting thing too is that they wanted to play the Bombers. because that was a fun game. There was always good competition. Yeah.
And as we mentioned, Bobby Spell was an ex-Bomber.
Right.
I remember I think Buster Ziegler played in that game, 61 game too.
Okay.
And he was an ex-Bomber.
Okay.
So, they probably wanted to get some revenge and go, hey, they'd like to hit a Bomber pitcher or two.
That's right, that's right. Our next all-star is Bob Kuykendall. He was a catcher.
Bobby was a catcher. He caught Haney, King, Quinn, Lynch. He was there for a number of years, and they said he had a laser for an arm. That's why that pickoff play we talked about earlier that Tommy Moore liked so well would work.
Yeah. And very interesting, he was 6 times All-Star. Not too many ball players get to be picked to the All-Star team 6 times.
That's only second to Tomlinson and Haney.
Right. And for a catcher to have caught for Haney, King, Lynch, and Quinn, that's pretty impressive because all of those are good pitchers. But
very good pitchers.
Every pitcher has their own unique style, Wayne, and it's the catcher almost has to be on the same page with the pitcher, particularly in fast pitch softball, because that ball is coming from such a short distance, 43 feet, and it's coming from an underhand throw, and it's a big ball, but because of that, it has so much movement on it that the catcher's got to kind of be able to guess where that ball's going to go.
It is, and we've talked about like Lynch threw a heavy ball, and you caught it. It felt like a rock.
Yeah.
And then Quinn would throw a lot of rise balls. Bobby Quinn would throw a lot of rise balls. King, I'm not sure how he pitched, but I think he was a drop ball pitcher just from looking at his motion and some of the old pitchers.
Yeah. So we're talking about the All-Stars from 1949 to 1969, and we've got a picture of Bill Parker. Bill was a tough player.
Bill was a very tough player, and he worked out at a company called Aerosonics. They made airline parts, and he was the president or pretty high up in that organization. But Bill was a good hitter.
Yeah.
He hit the ball well. He was a tough guy. He played second base, and he wasn't afraid to stand in there and turn a double play.
Now, second base is really, really tough because you're very, very close to home. When that ball comes off the bat and it goes past the pitcher, a second baseman's got to be able to grab catch the fly ball if it's low to the ground, or else pick it up off the ground and get it to first base.
Right, and also if you're trying to turn a double play, you're only 60 feet away, not 90 like a baseball player.
That's right.
So those faster guys are bearing down on you, and you got to get the ball and get out of there, step on the base, jump up, keep from taking your ankle out.
That's right. And Bill was a 6-time All-Star for the National All-Star team, which is pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive. And he was also a manager that I played for.
Okay.
He was a no-nonsense type guy.
So
he knew how to read pitchers, know. And by reading pitchers, what I'm saying is you had certain people like Doug Mason and Parker that could read a pitcher, and as a batter, they would give you a verbal signal as to whether it was a rise ball or a drop ball, which helped a lot.
Oh, wow, yes. It's kind of the inside information you need at the last minute to make a decision on whether you're going to swing high or swing low or not swing at all.
And I mean, during the game, the pitchers, they would get on to you calling the pitches, and then they would change everything. And then, he would start again, but after an inning or so, he would have them picked again and know what they were throwing.
And the interesting thing is a lot of times you say, well, why doesn't the pitcher just throw strikes? But if the pitcher just kept throwing strikes, the batters would catch on very quickly and just start swinging at the strikes. So they mix it up. They even throw balls on purpose, and that's one thing that Lauren told me when he was the manager in the 90s. Hey, listen, Bruce, I'm not going to throw a strike every single time. I throw balls on purpose because I want the batter to not know what I'm going to throw the next time around,
Yeah, and they do that, and there is also a brushback in softball. Like baseball, you hear the brushback pitch where little chin music up there to back that a hitter off of home plate.
Right, right. You know, and if you can back the batter up just a little bit in the box, that makes it easier to throw the ball on the outside of the plate and make it a little harder for them to get the bat around to where it connects solidly with the ball and gets a hit.
And, you know, some of the guys that threw drop balls, they threw a pitch that actually moved. It would come this way and then move out or move in.
Right.
You know, the plate would be here, that pitch would come and move that way, or if it would come and move this way, which even made it tougher to hit.
Right, right. So we've got Eddie King as our next National All-Star during this period. And we've got a good series of pictures here of Eddie King and his pitching style. You see his fluid motion. And obviously the photographer thought of that when they were putting that collage of pictures together for the paper.
Right, that's what they said about Eddie. Eddie was the same motion every pitch almost, and it was hard to tell if he did throw a different pitch
Right.
or a changeup.
Right. You know, and that would help the pitcher if they looked like they were throwing the same pitch, and then at the last minute, twist of the hand, snap of the wrist, caused the pitch to be different, but the batter wouldn't see that until maybe too late.
Same thing in baseball. When
Right.
you hear these guys talk
right.
about, hey, his motion's the same on his changeup and everything, that makes it really hard as a hitter.
Well, Eddie King was a four-time All-Star during that period of time, and where we looked at pictures from the Clearwater Sun. And so if anybody out there has old Clearwater Sun newspapers that they want to donate to the museum, the Clearwater Sun donated their archives to the Clearwater Library, and so we have a lot of that information at the public library. But it wouldn't hurt for us to have copies of the newspaper with pictures or articles about the Bombers during this period of time in the museum, so we can put them on display.
Exactly. There was a longtime photographer in Clearwater.
Yeah.
And I've lost my memory on who he was, but he passed away not long ago. And he was a big-time Bomber photo taker at the ball games. And we will get his name and give him his credit.
Right.
But he donated many, many, many pictures to the Clearwater Library, and the Bombers got some of those.
Right.
And the Historical Society.
And I know who you're talking about, and I can't come up with the name right at the moment as well, but I do know that there are people out in the community or around the country that have pictures that he took of various different Clearwater Bombers playing in various different games. And you know, nowadays we can get duplicates of that, and they could keep the original, but we could have the duplicate on display at the museum.
Hey, with the electronic world we have today, it's easy enough to email a picture or,
That's right.
or send
That's
a
right.
picture. So if anybody has anything, go to that ClearwaterBombersInc.com and send it to us. Or if my number will be up at the end of the show about
Right.
the golf tournament. Take my phone number and send it to me. Just really great.
Well, we've got another picture of Ron Weathersby, and he was a three-time All-Star. You notice the Bomber uniform has the Bomber script on it?
Yep, was that when that started, about that time?
About that time, I think we went to the Bomber script, and it's kind of very famous over the years.
Weathersby was a real strong guy. In fact, he hit supposedly one of the longest softballs I ever heard of at Jack Russell Stadium. You know, when the Phillies left, they would skin the infield for the Bombers.
Sure.
But also what they did is they moved home plate back about 10 to 15 feet.
Okay.
So now that 350-foot shot down the left field fence to the old green concrete fence that the
Right.
baseball players used, I heard Weathersby hit one from the softball home plate, and it bounced off of that wall, and when they got the ball back, it was lopsided.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that ball is not going to be used for the rest of the game. They're going to get another ball because they're not going to throw a lopsided ball. But yeah, I had heard he'd hit that too. You know, the softball, they play in a dirt infield, whereas
Most
in
of the time.
baseball, most of the time they have a grass infield. And so, like you said, when the Phillies were done with their spring training, they would skim the field and turn it into the Bomber Stadium again.
Every year, move home plate
Every
back,
year.
move the pitch. The actual pitcher's mound was fairly close to where the baseball home plate was after they redid the field for the Bombers.
Okay. All right. Wayne, we're going to have to continue on our next show with the rest of the All-Stars.
All right, let's do that. And, you know, we need to mention our golf tournament.
Right. May 19th, 2018 at Wentworth Country Club. And you can call that number, 727-678-1490 to register. And we'll look forward to seeing you there, golfing to help us raise money.
We're going to have
for
a big time, and
museum.
it's a limited supply. So
We've got to go. Thank you for watching the Clearwater Bomber Sports Show, and we'll see you next time.
have a good week.
Hi, I'm Bruce Kaufman, CEO of Sunrose, the Bible Educational Game Company, and co-game creator of the board game Jubilee. Jubilee is a fun 6-directional spelling crossword game about Bible information. Each Jubilee card asks you to spell something from the Bible on the Space Age crossword board. In Jubilee, you don't need to know the answers, you can look up the answers. In Jubilee, you can draw any letters that you need. You can play 11 different games with the Jubilee game board. Visit our website, sunrosegames.com, and order your Jubilee game now.